One of the things I've said before and that I continue to say, many things I continue to say. One is we can have political disagreements with our leaders, as we will inevitably have, while recognizing that some leaders are normal and others are not. And Joe Biden, despite not doing nearly everything I want him to do, has brought back a degree of respect to the United States globally that Donald Trump only ever dreamed of. And this has become so clear during the recent G7 and NATO summit and Joe Biden's various meetings with world leaders. Remember that under Donald Trump, world leaders were regularly, visibly annoyed with Trump, endlessly frustrated with Trump. Trump was increasingly just not a part of important conversations that world leaders were having. The reporting from the G7 and NATO is stunning. How quickly respect has been restored to the office. Now, that doesn't mean Biden's a hero. I've said so many times, let's not deify politicians. They're just people and they're flawed people. They're really just like you and me. It doesn't mean Biden is a hero. It's just a reminder of how disastrous the 4 years under Donald Trump were. Now, first of all, statistically, before we get to the sort of anecdotal stuff, Pew Research Center released a report last week documenting the huge improvement to the United States stature globally after the inauguration of Joe Biden. And the portion of world citizens from 12 different countries with confidence in the United States, in the U.S. president, went from 17% when Trump left office now to 75%. These are just stunning numbers. This is basically a quadrupling of the confidence in the American president in these early months of Joe Biden's presidency compared to when Donald Trump left office. The portion of citizens in these 12 countries with a favorable view of the United States has nearly doubled from 34% to 62% already. So statistically, when people like, the people from the My Pillow rally say the U.S. is now ashamed, we should be ashamed now. The U.S. is embarrassed globally. No. We have the data. Pew Research Center studies this. Noam Chomsky referred to it a couple of weeks ago when we interviewed him. The favorable view of the U.S. has nearly doubled around the world under Trump. But then anecdotally from the G7 and NATO, Politico describes it as, quote, overall, the G7 has delivered a significant win for Biden. While the leaders were panned for not doing enough to vaccinate the world and frequently fell short of consensus on the toughest issues, they're definitely moving in the same direction. And other leaders fell over themselves to welcome Biden to their table. When French President Macron was asked about whether the U.S. is back as a global leader, Macron said, definitely, and later said, it's great to have a U.S. president part of the club and very willing to cooperate. German Chancellor Angela Merkel said to reporters at the summit, quote, being able to meet Joe Biden is obviously important because he stands for the commitment to multilateralism, which we were missing in recent years. That's a direct shot at Trump. Even British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who quite frankly, politically is an adversary of Biden as a right winger. Boris Johnson said he was, quote, absolutely thrilled to see Biden and that speaking to Biden was, quote, a breath of fresh air. Heather Conley, who served as a deputy assistant secretary of state to Bush Cheney's administration, said to Politico, quote, there is no longer a feeling of complete dread before a NATO or G7 summit or fearing that the meetings would upend U.S. policy. A Washington Post report added Biden was greeted with delight by G7 leaders, relieved that Trump's tantrums will be replaced by Biden's backslapping. So let me say it again. We do not worship politicians on this show. Biden is a very flawed politician. And at the end of the day, he's just a person. But to deny the clear difference here is to ignore reality. Now, obviously and predictably, people on the right are saying we now are globally embarrassed. That's not backed up by the data. But what is really sad is to see even people on the left who see Biden not just as not progressive enough, but who want to go further and they want to pretend that we don't have a night and day difference from what we had under Trump. Guys, it's okay to recognize and still to say Biden hasn't done enough. Biden's not progressive enough. Biden may not achieve the things we want him to. That's fine. It's okay to say Trump was a reality TV freak show And Biden is a respectful, educated diplomat. And that's a really good thing. But we still hold Biden accountable on policy. It's okay to do that. But the leftists who react to this by saying, of course, Merkel and Boris Johnson like Biden, they're all the same center right neoliberal, whatever. Biden's policy platform is not that of Merkel. It is not that of Johnson. Will he achieve everything he said he was going to? No, of course not. And we'll hold him accountable and we'll be critical. But we really participate in a sort of collective gaslighting if we, and by we, I mean others, I'm not doing this, if we pretend that there's no night and day difference between what Trump was and what President Biden is today. The thing Trump could never buy, no matter how much he spent and no matter how much money he had, was class and professionalism and maturity and tact and diplomacy. And that doesn't make Biden a progressive hero by merely being that way. But it changes dramatically the standing of the United States around the world. And that's a really important thing.